Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Anup Jaiswal, Secretary of the Theosophy-SCIENCE Center, and I have the honor and pleasure of introducing the today's speaker, Mr. Jacques Manich, an aeronautical engineer and a theosophist for the last 4 decades, who will be speaking on the limits and scopes of modern science, the way to transcend these limits and look beyond. Before I call him, just for a small introduction, the word science has 2 distinct meanings. In its original form, it stands for a methodology, a very simple methodology of acquiring knowledge and understanding of the world around us, especially the physical world. According to this methodology, is based on careful and repeated observation, framing of a hypothesis to explain the observed facts, and then predicting and experimenting to test the hypothesis, either to reject it or to modify it or to accept it. This simple method, coupled with a curious and open mind in the last 3 centuries, has brought tremendous understanding of the world of nature around us. And not only understanding, it has been instrumental in developing technologies which were undreamt and which are affecting nearly every facet of our life, of our existence. But simultaneously, this success has given us new twist, and science has also adopted a new meaning. And this meaning lies in a dogma where science stands for a very mechanistic and very materialistic view of not only matter but life itself. According to modern science, most of the believers in modern science, they take the universe as a giant machine governed by fixed physical laws. Mind, spirit, consciousness, these are like a ghost in the machine and virtually of no consequence. And there are many thinkers who have been working very hard, their names are still very popular, to somehow exorcise this ghost out of this machine. But in the last few decades, scientific investigation itself stepped upon certain facts and evidences, which has shaken the very foundation of this materialistic science. The reality of matter has seamlessly merged with the apparent unreality of matter, mind and spirit. And in the words of the famous linguist Noam Chomsky, he describes that these scientific facts which we are seeing today, instead of exorcising the ghost out of the machine, has exorcised the machine itself. Only the ghost remains. But this does not undermine in any way the scientific methodology, and rather there is urgent need and new requirement that we adopt this methodology not only for studying matter but also in the realm of spirit and mind. It is to elaborate this, on this new dimension, I call upon Mr. Jacques Manich to present his views on this fascinating subject. Thank you very much. Mr. Manich.
Thank you, Anup. Dear sister, dear brother, dear world, dear president, dear team, thank you for that unique moment in a unique place to share thoughts and ideas on this fascinating subject, science and theosophy. As we've heard since the beginning of this convention, change is the name of the game. And together with change, we also heard that resistance to change is also part of the game. In the Indian tradition, before the manifested world came, there was a complete equilibrium between the gunas. And once this equilibrium starts to break, manifestations appear. And one of the gunas is called tamas. And that's what makes you go to sleep when you don't put any energy to do something. We have a similar thing in physics. Modern physics say that there was a sea of energy with a continuous creation of matter and antimatter. And we still don't know why, but at one point in time there was a breaking of the symmetry, and only matter survived. And when matter arrives, even if it's equivalent to energy on its form, it also has something very similar. It's called inertia. And inertia is really something which just prevents you to keep moving on your direction. If you ever had to push a car with no more gasoline, you know what inertia is. So change has always been present. One can wonder, why do we want to talk about change? Because something else is happening during the last decades. It is the acceleration in changes. It's like, like if you were navigating in a very small river, very quiet, and suddenly someone opened up the upstream reservoir, and not knowing what is happening, suddenly you are in a big rush in the flow without knowing what to do. So science is a big contributor to the acceleration we can sense. But first of all, let's clarify the word, because science is but an abstract concept. In fact, the process is that we have scientists, men and women, who make discovery. Then they pass on the discovery to men and women, engineering, who do technology. Then it's passed on to men and women, the producer, who produce the goods. And at the end of the food chain, we have consumer, ourselves, still men and women. So in fact, when we say science is a contributor to acceleration, we better say men and women are contributors to the acceleration. Today we will take a look at that phenomenon, the acceleration of change, and its consequence on the evolution of our human society. Then we will take a look at some phenomena which are emerging, some new trend in the scientific community and also in theosophical community. And from this observation, we will present some idea about action, active participation to the movement. But first of all, before we embark on this trip, let's start with a small story. You know, this type of story we used to love when we were kids, just before going to bed, just to make us joyful. But please don't go to sleep after it, we have serious matter to deal with. Once upon a time, the technology was supposed to work. Yes, it is. Once upon a time, a tiny molecule of water was born, coming from the sky in a high mountain. She woke up when she felt she was moving down between rocks and started rushing in the falls with great delight. Her name was Science Mole. We will call her Molly. She was very excited. And soon, together with her companion, she wished to measure and understand everything around her. The pressure surrounding her, the temperature agitating her, her moving speed, the height of the cliff, the distance she was traveling, and so on. Soon, she met older molecule who told her, "Be careful, the time and distance you are measuring are not fixed value. Should you speed up, relativity will catch you." She became afraid. What could be this strange beast who was lurking in the blue, waiting to invade her landscape and modify her vision of the world? But she continued to run down the stream, entering a large city. Here, another old molecule told her that this place, far away from her birthplace, was also the place of a very, very strange creature called the black whale. Nobody had seen it, but legend told that it could swallow anything which would dare to come too close to it. And because nobody ever came back from it, nobody knew what was to happen there. Rushing forward, she reached another place downstream where there was so many other molecules that she could not see the banks of the river. Another friend came, very excited, and told her, "You need to know, we just discovered that our river is expanding in all directions, and we don't know why. Let's pray not to fall in the hell of black energy." All the superstitions were still very active among these people. Now very frightened, she rushed ahead, looking only in front of her. Suddenly, she heard a voice telling her, "You think you are here, but in reality you are everywhere at the same time. And you just cannot know where you are and at the same time at what speed you are moving. Therefore you don't know where you are and you cannot know where you are going. Now you better quit from trying to understand your surrounding world." That was too much for her. Finally she decided to close down her eyes and to let it go without any more resistance. After a long, long moment, she finally sensed no more movement, and she opened her eyes. She was standing along an infinity of water molecules, all standing still. She saw that each of the molecules had a small blue light inside themselves, illuminating their surroundings. She intuitively knew she had reached the end of her journey, until the Master, the Sun, would call her again in the sky to restart another journey. Molly was now integrated in the ocean of theosophy, and a new dawn was to start. Okay, let's go back to serious matter then. Science and tradition, an old couple. An important constant of life in this planet is its rhythm. We've already heard about it during this convention. It is one of the three fundamental propositions of the ageless wisdom. Here we are talking about all cycles which sustain the mode of being during the manifestation phase. We are familiar with the main cycles like the life and death of cells, organisms, people, civilization, stars, universe. Same for the day and light sequence, the season, the water cycle, the carbon cycle, etc. on this earth, even the electricity cycle. When we look at the tradition of humankind, we find cycle of cosmogenesis, which, except in the Christian tradition, the smallest interval is expressed in 100,000 of terrestrial years. But there exists also some more shorter cycle and much more closer to us. The life cycle of our human cells, what our physical body are made of. We have, roughly speaking, 100,000 billion cells in our body. 100,000 billion cells in our body. Nobody would dare to know that. Which, side by side, would be equivalent to a 15,000 kilometer rope. Each one, each individual. They work all together, fortunately for us, on their own, to maintain the integrity of individuals during their lives. Every day, talking about change, every day 20 billion of cells will die and be replaced by new ones. A replacement cycle can last from some hours to 15 years and more. Then it means that most of our cells have less than 10 years. When we feel a little bit old, we may want to remember that fact. Some other number just to illustrate. The surface of our lungs is around 100 square meters. The length of our blood vessel is 100,000 kilometers. And we synthesize almost 1,000 molecules every second. Could you believe that? What is going on in this place at this moment? Our physical body is a marvel, the fruit of billion years of evolution. This is what science tells us. The ageless wisdom tells us also that the complete human physical body is renewed every 7 years. This is an example among many where it may be possible to build bridges between science and tradition. And it is not per chance. There is a key fundamental axiom which everybody can recognize easily. Reality is one, and we, as human beings, are interpreting it with an infinite set of possibilities based on our culture, conditioning, tendency, atavism. When we talk about a scientist or a spiritualist, we need to keep in mind that both are first of all human beings at a certain stage of their development. They do not differ so much. They have both their conditioning which carry them on their life path with common features. So let's look at these two approaches and let's see how they can enhance each other for the sake of a better humanity. Science, as defined by Madame Blavatsky, is an abstract of every fact, a comprehension of every truth within the scope of human research and intelligence. Science has deeply penetrated inside our day-to-day lives and pervades now almost all aspects of human society. The industrial, economical, financial, educational, artistic and cultural domain are all heavily relying on technology brought by scientific discovery. Science has reshaped our landscape, has modified deeply our way of living, and it is important not to ignore it. As we know, it has not always been the case, and it took centuries for it to emerge as one of the forces driving our evolution. Since early in its history, it had to fight against predominant dogmatism carried by the main religion, at least in Western countries. The last 40 years have brought a strong acceleration to the development of science, widespread now to most of the world countries. But more important is the dissemination factor, powered by more open boundary between countries and worldwide communication means allowing real-time access to information and online cooperative process. As of today, there are about 7 million scientists in the world doing research in more than 250 academic disciplines. Almost one scientist per 1,000 human beings on Earth. Scientists publish an average of 1 million research papers a year. And they live in physical and virtual community with no more borders, the global village. For example, the European Laboratory for Particle Physics in Switzerland has on a permanent basis 8,000 researchers from 80 nationalities coming from 50 countries. The diversity of culture and tradition gives a better sum of competencies and experience. Most of the research are now performed under interdisciplinary and multinational approaches, and such a combined effort allows for more synergy of financial and intellectual power, way above what any country could afford. Why do we talk about that? You could wonder. This is the type of best practice we may want to remember in our work. In one word, science became an enormous machine to dig inside the mystery of the physical world and all its measurable aspects. Far away from the 19th century image made of some renowned universities and some isolated genius. Therefore, the impact of science on the social, economical, cultural life is tremendous. It has reshaped our society for good and not good, and not so good. On the good side, for example, sustainability, reduction of inequality between countries, conservation of nature, preservation of local culture and ethics became driver in science development. It may surprise us, but that's the case. At least they are part of the value of today's science. As an example, the 6th World Science Forum Declaration, it was just in 2013, states that scientists are individually and collectively ethically responsible for the advancement of science and the use of its benefit to society. The report has even the following recommendation. It is very strong. It is the responsibility of both those who promote science and scientists to maintain the primacy of moral and social concerns over short-term economic and political interest in the industry, in the selection and implementation of research and development projects by government of private industry. It's a very sound statement, but real life shows that these wishful statements are not or not enough implemented. It did not prevent overexploitation of the earth resource, like our sister told us this morning, which is on full swing currently. Obviously, scientists cannot control the use of their invention, and we have seen that for a long time. Responsibility resides in the nature of man, its lower personality being driven by greeds and desires. The current motto could be always more for me, more profit for the producer of goods, and more desire fulfillment for the consumers. Technology have enabled this acceleration, and the development of liberal economy at the planet level has impaired most of the authority government capability to control the movement. We may be sitting on a high-tech race car with no more steering wheel. Let's take a quick look at some evolution of the tradition. When I talk tradition here, it's all religion, tradition, culture, including, of course, theosophy as the synthesis of it. Tradition, including all religion, philosophy, and cultural heritage, have also their life cycles. Today we see some of the monotheist religion declining sharply in some countries, some Eastern religion like Buddhism blooming in Western countries, and a lot of New Age movement appearing and disappearing. For so many centuries, social, political, community life was organized around the main religious tradition. They have shaped human behavior through their philosophy, moral, and ethics. Because they took over not only the spiritual aspect of life, but also the temporal aspects, they have molded our society using moral and physical repression means up to the terror mode like the Inquisition in the 16th century in Europe. Vanishing, they left an empty space regarding human values, moral and ethics that they used to promote, to nurture and protect. And because nature abhors void, other values quickly jumped in to replace the old ones. And because religious moral is disappearing, the lower mind finds no more obstruction to express its basic behavior, the fulfillment of its desires. The infernal cycle is started because desire cannot be exhausted by being fed, we know that. It increases constantly its demand for more for me. At the other end of the food chain, producers of goods increase their rate of production, the variety of their product, creating new needs for the always hungry mass of consumers. And in turn, that has a repercussion on the resource of Mother Earth. The infernal cycle is up and running. Let's dig a little bit inside the power of science. One can wonder why science is taking so much importance and visibility today. Apart from the quantitative aspect of the outcomes of science in daily life, manifested by the technologies enabled by the discoveries, scientists have focused on a broader scope of influence on society, targeting decision makers and education. Their strategic plan, built and approved at world level, are targeting not only materialistic welfare, but also materialistic value. For example, an educational project initiated in the 2000 and presented at the UN level, United Nations level, was driven by the urgent need to promote a world community of scientifically and technologically literate citizens. Goals and objectives were highlighted as personal development through acquisition of scientific knowledge, personal mental development through use of scientific skills method, development of individual attribute, attitude and perception, and more important, development of value and skills as a responsible member of society. Just to understand the scope and the extent of the influence, we can read this simple phrase from someone called Ned Lane, the director of Science and Technology Policy Institute in Washington. He said, "It is certain that our responsibility," he is talking about the scientists of course, "extend beyond the world of science. We are the one who will help determine the ways in which new knowledge intersects with societal goals and values. We are the one who can stand at the crossroads of human knowledge and human needs and help our world chart the course ahead." So it looks like if scientists have taken the management of the world. He just did not tell us where this course is leading to. Obviously, spirituality does not belong to the proposed value. All ingredients for a materialistic society are there, and we may remember science fiction novel of Orwell, 1984, which seems to become reality. To summarize this part, all observation and fact are showing that human evolution on this planet is accelerating and may have taken a wrong turn, or let's say is taking a turn at too high a speed and can be centrifugated out of its evolutionary path. Universal values are vanishing with a decrease in religious institution influence, and cultural values are centered around materialism. Maybe this picture is unbalanced, too pessimistic, you would think, or too simplistic. But the mainstream materialistic philosophy and its practical implementation, supported and endorsed at the world level, are unequivocal. This should be a wake-up call. This should be a wake-up call for us, not a phone call. The next question would be then, what can we do? Before trying to give some answer to this question, let's first have a look at some new trends in scientists and theosophical community. As we mentioned, today science and technology seems at the top of their power, their influence spread all over the world, their triumph looked not challengeable, but unexpected difficulties are emerging from inside. They may reveal some bottom line to the current of thinking in science. This science is based on the basic concept that all reality is material, physical as we know. There is no other reality than the materialistic reality. Consciousness is a byproduct of the physiological brain activity. Matter is lacking any consciousness. The evolution has no goal, and God exists only inside human brain. This is the mechanistic, materialistic philosophy which was shaped during 3 centuries ago and which was dominant during the 19th century. For the last 200 years, materialistic scientists claim they will be able to explain everything using physics and chemistry. It was just a matter of time and investment. The last decade brought nice model trying to describe reality as theorized, as seen, as measured and validate. The 2 major ones are the standard model, which describe the building blocks of the universe, together with the creation process of the particle, all based on the quantum field theories. This model got even another observational proof with the discovery of the Higgs particle in 2012. The other one is the Big Bang model, the cosmogonic model of the universe, based on the general relativity theory. These 2 theories seem perfect and in agreement with most of the observation in each of their domain of validity. There is just a small hiccup. Nobody has been able so far to reconcile them in order to give a consistent view of reality. Albert Einstein and other scientists dedicate their life to the search of the famous TOE, the theory of everything, with no success. And there are many other discrepancies acknowledged by scientific communities. For example, general relativity as it is theorized the existence of gravitational waves induced by cosmic events like neutron stars and black hole formation or galaxy collisions. After more than 25 years of listening to the cosmos, no gravitational wave have been detected, nor any graviton, the particle which carry the gravitation interaction. There may be a basic misunderstanding of what gravitation is there. On the particle side, the string theory, then the superstring theory, and now the M theory, try to provide with a model of reality with an almost infinite number of potential universe. We are talking about 100 to the power 500 universe, something we cannot even imagine. And there also, after 30 years of intensive investment and testing, we are still searching for the supersymmetry. Maybe it's coming. More or worse, the multiverse theory cannot be observed, therefore it cannot be foolproof, validate. We even start hearing that we may know that maybe we don't know. Visible matter accounts for only 4% of what the universe should require to validate the basic physical laws according to today's general relativity. So the basic model seems in jeopardy, and the accumulation of dead ends is finally triggering some common sense reaction with some scientists, but a very few for the moment, because the big majority is still believing in the old materialistic creeds. It is interesting to note that it is similar to a religious creed, which generate blind faith, and with the same aftermath that some religious creed which are based on model which cannot be verified or which are so far apart from everybody's perception. The foundation of materialistic science is starting to shake. Too much inconsistency are undermining the belief in the all-powerful science. These facts, together with the rigid materialistic mindset pervading academic grounds are triggering the development of scientist movements aiming at a broader scope of research, including other plans of consciousness than the physical one. A recent example, it's 2014, is a group of scientists, including Mario Beauregard, Rupert Sheldrake, Charles Tart, and other PhDs, who created a movement aiming at opening the landscape of science. They organized an international summit on post-materialist science, spirituality, and society in February 2014. The purpose of the summit was to discuss the impact of the materialist ideology on science and the emergence of a post-materialist paradigm for science, spirituality, and society. The summary report of this gathering can be found. I think we have the address somewhere. A manifesto was published with the following extract give the dimension of the initiative. First, mind represents an aspect of reality as primordial as the physical world. We never heard that in scientist wording. Mind is fundamental in the universe. It cannot be derived from matter and reduced to anything more basic. There is a deep interconnectedness between mind and the physical world. Mind can influence the state of the physical world and operate in a non-local fashion, not confined in specific point in space, such as brain and body, or to specific point in time, such as the present. And very important, mind are apparently unbounded and may unite in ways suggesting a unitary one mind that includes all individual single minds. Seems very familiar for us theosophists. And finally, this manifesto says scientists should not be afraid to investigate spirituality and spiritual experiences, since they represent a central aspect of human existence. The final point of the manifesto states that the shift from materialist science to the post-materialist science may be of vital importance to the evolution of the human civilization. It may be even more pivotal than the transition from geocentrism to heliocentrism. Definitively, something is going on in the world of science. We should keep our attention on this movement. They may be announcing a new wave of researchers with a broader mindset. And something is also moving in our theosophical community. Theosophical community has spread all over the world since the creation of the Theosophical Society in 1875. In the course of its history, it recorded departure, cessation, and some parallel organizations were created, some still being alive today. Some of them have kept the spirit of the founder of the Theosophical Society and are working toward the same goals, if not with the same references. A new approach is starting to emerge there, with a willingness to open communication between these various theosophical movements for the benefit of theosophy. During the summer of this year, an open gathering was organized and came up with a declaration highlighting the value to work together and to implement available synergy in theosophical studies domain. Science is one of them. The Naarden Declaration advocates unity in diversity. It can be more than a wish list. It can be viewed as a kind of impulse for the theosophical movement in the future. And as every time, it will be up to theosophists, individuals and leaders to transform it into reality. The Declaration says, in an undogmatic matter and through harmonious cooperation, we will strengthen the theosophical movement for the benefit of humanity. In the spirit of unity and brotherhood, we endeavor to make theosophy a living power in the world. We commit ourselves through learning, training and cross-pollination to popularize and keep the teachings alive for future generations. As theosophists and students on the spiritual path, we know, thanks to the tradition of the world which synthesizes the ageless wisdom, that reality is above all possible description, and that its manifestation, nature, is a wonderful and magnificent landscape in which we, human beings, among many other streams of living entities, are doing our recurrent pilgrimage toward the next step of evolution. Our heritage, the theosophical teachings, has opened for us a window and has given us knowledge and tool to observe, experiment, and live inside this instance of reality as participants in the course of evolution. It is a wholesome, integrated sum of knowledge which provides us with multiple roadmaps to reach our destination. The main difference with the scientific approach is that it is based on wisdom at the service of humanity, which seems to have completely vanished from the materialistic scope. Wisdom is this inner quality of mind, a potential which, when awakened through the self-transformation process, can give the clarity of mind necessary for an integral understanding of nature and the selflessness for the acquired knowledge to benefit all sentient beings. Current scientific philosophy have lost their wisdom and therefore cannot lead to an integral understanding of nature. The partial, distorted glimpses of scientific knowledge are limited to the domain of the lower triangle of human constitution, including the physical, emotional, and mental aspects. The very fact that the mechanistic model implies that only the physical realm has a reality and that all other aspects are physically derived from it gives an incoherent view of the nature. Matter creates life, which can produce mind. Soul and spirit are outside the science boundary. And more important, there are no models to describe the transition phase between these domains. These lead to the conclusion that science can probably continue on its path forever without touching on higher realities, as long as its paradigm is based on materialistic philosophy. And in the meantime, the cultural value which it put forward are endangering humanity. For it to change course, there may be two possibilities. The first one could be new discoveries, scientific discovery, which cannot be explained by current models, and there are already many. And these may open the road toward new model more encompassing of a greater reality. But these would be very remote and random. Moreover, it may not lead to dramatic changes in the philosophy and the associated cultural values. We already have some examples, like the invention of the concept of dark matter and dark energy. Observation around the 1930s have led the space scientists to the conclusion that the general relativity model was not able to represent the movement of external stars in large galaxies. Based on the model, they should have been centrifugate long time ago. But because scientists could not imagine that gravitation as the leading force in the visible universe could be different in various places in the cosmos, they have invented the dark matter concept as the embodiment of an unknown substratum called WIMPs, weakly interacting matter particle, which effect is similar to gravitation in order to bring back the model under control. But so far, no WIMPs have been detected. Same for the dark energy. Having discovered in the last decade of the previous century that the visible universe may be accelerating in its expansion, they invented the concept of dark energy and those with the gravitational type reverse effect, a repelling gravitation. And we are left with no more than 4% of the universe as a known quantity visible space object, obeying the basic model of physics. The second possibility to influence the course of science may reside in the complementarity between science and tradition theosophy. Science is looking at nature from the bottom and stops short at the border of mind. It is a form of knowledge of the phenomenon and their interaction. Ageless wisdom brings a holistic model of the manifested world together with description of fundamental processes like cosmogenesis and anthropogenesis. It teaches not only the description of phenomenon, but more important, the root cause of this phenomenon. Therefore, even if a large gap exists between the two approaches, some bridges must be there, hidden by the materialistic forest on one side and the cloudy tradition on the other side. We may need adventurer, capable to speak both languages, free from any dogma, and ready to enter this no man's land. Here we go. Transcending science. To enable and support such an adventure, a project is proposed to the community of the seeker of reality. This project, which will be hosted on the internet at the link you can see on the screen, is first of all a place. And even if it's virtual to start with, it's a place to foster and nurture the synergy between science and tradition. It is currently in the preliminary phase, gathering inputs to build its basic methodology, scope of work, domains for study, and communication tools. The website will be opening during the first trimester of 2015, and we plan an e-journal to publish its progress on a regular basis. Let's have a quick look on what are the goals of this project, because there are multiple. First, to bring back science culture to the forefront of theosophist attention. To be in a position to understand and argue on scientific subjects, one has to be, of course, curious, but also willing to learn a minimum of the language of science. Of course, not the most abstract mathematical model, but the basic scientific approach. Observation, measurement, abstract modeling, and prediction. Madame Blavatsky advertised this knowledge acquisition as a necessity. She told us, know all that you can, become conversant with, and sift all that the schools have declared, and as much more on your own account as is possible. Theosophical Lodge may want to include this type of studies in their program. The second goal is to reignite working group with scientifically oriented theosophists wherever possible. Science has always been one of the three pillars of theosophical studies, and many science and theosophy study groups have been active, and some, but a few, are still active today. There are large theosophical communities like the US, India, and other countries who have knowledgeable scientists or science-oriented members ready to work. Organizing or reigniting science theosophy group would be an important step in this process of acquisition, knowledge acquisition. The third goal would be to organize cross-communication, cross-fertilization between these groups throughout the world. We've seen that the scientists are working this way now for a long time. This is synergy which can feed and emulate each other. Common research program could enhance the quality of the studies and avoid duplication of effort. We have also seen the emergence of willingness to work together with other streams of theosophists. This is an opportunity for cross-pollination. And finally, if we can develop the three first points, we would, and at the same time probably, develop dedicated research program on specific subjects where bridges between science and theosophy is foresighted. Of course, we cannot start from scratch and try to find one or two subjects. There is an immense amount of knowledge which has been acquired by those science theosophy groups. We need to restart from that. There are many ideas which we need to go ahead and explore a little bit further. One of the main steps, I think, would be, in the 19th century it was important to demonstrate. For example, telepathy and many ESP phenomena, it was important just to show it was existing. I think today it's not enough to do that. Of course, we need to continue, but we also need to try to define the models. Scientists are capable to do that on some phenomena that they just don't understand, but they have the mindset to be able to modelize it. That would be very useful, because it would then allow us to go one step further in terms of communicating and exchanging with the scientists. If we could say, not only, okay, we know it exists, and we have some scientific study which prove, for example, that telepathy exists, but how does it work? That's where we have the capability to bring the missing link, I think. This can be considered as a major step, where major studies and research can be brought to the attention of the scientific community at large. So it's different goals. There are goals which are centered, or at least directed, to the theosophical community, to bring back the culture, to restart a working group. And after that, we have that once we are well comfortable with what we are doing, and that we have a good language, we can go and meet the scientists and exchange on that in order to build those bridges. If successful, implementing these objectives should bring a better understanding of reality, not only in closed circle like theosophical community, but also to the public at large, allowing the eternal value of the ageless wisdom to spread with convincing power, convincing enough to awake attention toward universal value which may influence the trajectory of the mad car of humanity. Of course, we know we are far from that, but that can be our objective. because that will be the outcome if we succeed there. Having said so, one needs to be realistic. And maybe I'm too realistic. This is a long and difficult path, full of roadblocks which we need to clear up. Otherwise we would have succeeded a long time ago on that. We may want to explore the lesson learned from past experience in these domains. Why weren't we successful enough in convincing the scientific community of the value of spiritual tradition for the sake of understanding a reality? Maybe some dogma crept in, and the attitude of we are the one who know everything, you cannot know and you'll never know, is not the most productive one today. We may want to be a little bit more humble. We may even want to start by saying that we know what the ageless wisdom heritage has given us, and we will try to transpose it in a language which can be understandable and workable by scientists. This is the first stone of a methodology capable of building the foundation, one of the pillars for future bridges. The other pillar, on the science side, will have the same difficulty to resolve. The language of science is often unintelligible for ordinary people. Therefore, there is a need for a transitional language bridging this important gap. Another potential pitfall from previous experience is a tendency to either wrap up science with theosophical garments or to try to do science on theosophical truth. Usually it does not bear really not many fruits. A middle way approach may be required. And finally, with an open mind attitude, we may want to be ready to revisit, if needed, some of our piece of knowledge at the light of the 21st century discovery and understanding of nature. And it is not to say that the ageless wisdom has some flaws. It is just to say that we as human beings are interpreting it, distorting slightly probably it, and it may end up with some inconsistency. The Dalai Lama used to say, if science can demonstrate that some of the Buddhist beliefs are not consistent, I'm ready to revisit them. We are convinced that an open heart, free from dogma and prejudice, can pour the ageless wisdom milk into the tube of science and can transform the iron of the lower mind into the gold of the oneness, to guide again humanity across this critical phase of its evolution. As a conclusion, something is happening in our world. Human evolution is accelerating and universal values are vanishing, leaving us with no more seatbelt in a science-driven world. At the same time, questioning and openings started to bloom, and the quest for a better understanding of reality is burgeoning. The theosophical community, guided by ageless wisdom heritage, has a role to play in this phase and shall be ready for it. Humbleness and joyfulness are our two legs on this road. Life is a wonderful experience, and we will quote our beloved past President Radha Bunier, who described it when she said, life has immeasurable dimension and subtlety. It is rich, it is creative, it is dynamic, Truth being the discovery of the beauty, meaning and mystery of life. Truth being the discovery of the beauty, the meaning and the mystery of life, is also necessarily without limit, necessarily subtle and dynamic, a blessing without parallel. Thank you very much.